Welcome to part one of the Ancient Civilizations Iceberg, where we explore civilizations and societies from the well known to the extremely obscure, from how they rose to how they fell. This iceberg series will be focusing on lesser known ancient civilizations, and as such, the most well known ancient civilizations, such as Rome, Greece, and China, will not be directly discussed. That said, if you want to hear about better known ancient civilizations, they will be mentioned frequently throughout this series in relation to the lesser known civilization. If you're unfamiliar with this format, we'll be starting with the more well known of the lesser known civilizations, and then progressively getting more obscure as we delve into the depths. Also, remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. The Etruscans. The Etruscan civilization, flourishing from around 900 BC to its ultimate demise in 27 BC, was one of the major cultures in ancient Italy, predating and significantly influencing the Roman Empire. The origins of the Etruscans are somewhat debated among scholars. Some theories suggest they migrated from Asia Minor or were related to the Phoenicians, while others argue they were an indigenous population of Italy. The consensus leans towards the latter, with evidence showing that the Etruscans evolved from the Villanovan culture in the early Iron Age around 900 BC. The Etruscans established a complex society with a network of city-states across what is now Tuscany, western Umbria, and northern Lazio. These city-states formed a loose confederation known as the Etruscan League, which would reach the zenith of its power and territory around 700 BC before beginning a long decline. At its height, Etruscan territory extended into the Po Valley and included areas of northern Italy and parts of the Adriatic coast. Etruscan society was highly stratified, with a distinct class system that included an aristocracy, common citizens, and slaves. Women in Etruscan society enjoyed relatively higher status compared to their Greek and Roman counterparts. They could own property, partake in banquets, and were depicted in various art forms alongside men, indicating their significant social roles. Religion played a crucial role in Etruscan life, and many of the old Etruscan gods would be integrated into the Roman pantheon later on. Some of the most significant gods to make this migration were Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, who represented a fusion of Etruscan, native Roman, and Greek religious beliefs and ideas. Etruscan priests practiced divination and were believed to possess the ability to predict the future by reading animal entrails and interpreting natural phenomena such as the flight patterns and behavior of birds. Notably, these religious and ritualistic concepts were adapted by the Romans later on as well. The Etruscans were known for their skills in metallurgy and trade. They exploited the rich mineral resources of Tuscany, particularly iron and copper, which they traded extensively across the Mediterranean. Their strategic position and alliances, such as with the Carthaginians, helped them dominate maritime trade routes. Militarily, the Etruscans were initially strong, defending their territories against various adversaries, including the Greeks and Celts. However, the Etruscans were powerless to stop significant inflows of Greek settlers into the Italian peninsula and Sicily. These Greek settlers in Italy and Sicily formed an outcropping of Greek civilization known contemporaneously and presently as Magna Graecia. The power of the Etruscans began to wane after several significant defeats. These defeats culminated in the Battle of Cumae in 474 BC, which saw the Etruscans defeated by a coalition of Greeks from southern Italy and Sicily. This loss weakened their naval power and cut off vital trade routes. Further, the rise of Rome posed a significant threat to Etruscan hegemony. Rome's expansionist policies led to continuous conflicts with the Etruscan city-states. One of the pivotal moments was the fall of the city of Veii to Rome in 396 BC after a lengthy siege. This victory demonstrated Rome's growing military prowess and marked the beginning of the end for Etruscan independence. In addition to military defeats, the Etruscans faced economic hardships brought on by their loss of hegemony. The decline in trade and frequent conflicts drained their resources. By the late 4th century BC, the Celtic invasions further destabilized the northern regions, and the loss of the Po Valley cut off another crucial economic area. The final blow came with the Roman conquests in the 3rd century BC. Rome systematically annexed Etruscan territories, and by 27 BC, with the establishment of the Roman Empire, the remaining Etruscan cities were fully integrated into Roman administration. Etruscan culture and language gradually disappeared, assimilated into the broader Roman and Italic world. Despite their downfall, the Etruscans left a lasting legacy, a legacy which is outsized due to their significant influence on Roman civilization. Their contributions to Roman culture were substantial, including religious practices, architectural innovations such as the arch, and social customs like the gladiatorial games. Roman urban planning, art, and even their pantheon were also deeply influenced by Etruscan tradition. The Minoan civilization, flourishing on the island of Crete from approximately 3000 BC to 1000 BC, is regarded as one of the earliest advanced societies in Europe. This civilization, named after the mythical king Minos, made significant contributions to art, architecture, and trade in the ancient world, and left its mark on future Greek civilization. Notably, while the Minoans are often imagined or portrayed as having a unified state with a monarchy, likely due to the popularity of the King Minos legend, the actual structure of the society is unknown. None of the various artworks found on Crete unambiguously depict someone in a role approximating kingship or rulership. The origins of the Minoan civilization trace back to the early Neolithic inhabitants of Crete, around 7000 BC, who established farming communities. By 3100 BC, during the early Minoan period, the society began to exhibit characteristics of an advanced culture, with developments in ceramics and metallurgy. The early Minoans lived in small villages that gradually grew into larger, more complex urban centers. The civilization reached its zenith during the Middle and Late Minoan periods, roughly between 2000 and 1450 BC. The Minoans built large, elaborate palaces, the most famous being Knossos, Phaistos, and Melia. These palaces were not only royal residences but also centers of economic and religious activity. The architectural sophistication of the Minoans is evident in their use of multi-story buildings, advanced plumbing systems, and vibrant frescoes depicting religious ceremonies, nature, and everyday life. Trade played a crucial role in the prosperity of the Minoan civilization. Their strategic position in the Mediterranean facilitated extensive trade networks with Egypt, the Near East, and the Aegean Islands. The Minoans exported goods such as olive oil, wine, and pottery, while importing precious materials like copper and tin, which were essential for their bronze production. The decline of the Minoan civilization began around 1450 BC, marked by the destruction of many palatial centers. The exact cause of this downfall remains a topic of debate among historians and archaeologists. Several factors likely contributed to the civilization's collapse. Around 1600 BC, a massive volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, is believed to have had devastating effects on Minoan society. The eruption likely caused significant environmental disruption, including tsunamis, ashfall, and climatic changes, which would have severely impacted agriculture and trade. Further archaeological evidence shows that many Minoan sites, including palaces, were destroyed by earthquakes. These natural disasters would have weakened the infrastructure and stability of the civilization, making it vulnerable to other threats. The rise of the Mycenaean civilization on mainland Greece coincided with the decline of the Minoans. There is evidence that the Mycenaeans took over several Minoan sites, including Knossos, and integrated Minoan elements into their own culture. This suggests that the Mycenaeans may have played a role in the eventual downfall of the Minoan civilization through conquest and assimilation. Notably, however, some modern historians believe this to be less of a hostile takeover and more of a drawn out merging of cultures over centuries. By 1200 BC, most Minoan sites were abandoned, and the once flourishing civilization faded into history. Today, the Minoan civilization remains primarily known for its connections to Greek mythology, with King Minos, Theseus, Icarus, the Minotaur, and the Labyrinth still famous the world over millennia later. Easter Island, known as Rapa Nui to its indigenous people, is one of the most remote inhabited islands in the world. Located in the southeastern Pacific Ocean, the island is famed for its nearly 900 monumental statues, known as moai, created by the early Rapa Nui people. Easter Island was settled by Polynesians between 700 and 1200 AD, with some estimates suggesting arrival closer to 800 AD. These settlers, navigating thousands of miles of ocean, established a society that would become renowned for its remarkable cultural and architectural achievements. The moai statues, some standing up to 30 feet tall and weighing as much as 82 tons, were erected to honor ancestors and possibly served religious or social functions. These statues were primarily carved from volcanic tuff found in the Rano Raraku quarry and transported across the island, a feat that still puzzles researchers today. The Rapa Nui society was divided into clans, each led by a chieftain. The construction of moai was likely a communal effort, reflecting a high degree of social organization and cooperation. The islanders developed a unique script known as Rongo-Rongo, though its meaning remains largely undeciphered. This script likely represents one of the few known examples of an independent writing system developed in a prehistoric society. The downfall of Easter Island's civilization is often attributed to environmental degradation. As the population grew, the demand for resources increased. Trees were cut down for agriculture, boat building, and moving the moai statues. This extensive deforestation led to soil erosion, reduced crop yields, and the loss of raw materials necessary for daily life and further moai construction. By the time European explorers arrived in the early 18th century, the island was largely deforested, and the society was in decline. Further, in an ironic and sad twist, it is speculated that the Rapa Nui attempted to devote more time to moai construction, the more society declined. Internal conflicts exacerbated the island's struggles, especially given that the island was never known to have been ruled by a single chieftain. Clans engaged in wars, often toppling each other's moai statues in a display of dominance. These conflicts further weakened the society, making it vulnerable to external threats. The first recorded European contact occurred in 1722 when Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen arrived, estimating the population at around 3,000 inhabitants. Further, he noted the society to be fairly healthy at that point. Subsequent visits by Spanish and British explorers in the late 18th century found a dramatically reduced and struggling population. European contact brought devastating consequences. Diseases to which the Rapa Nui had no immunity, such as smallpox, and raids by Peruvian traders in the 1860s decimated the population. The introduction of European livestock and plants further disrupted the local ecosystem. The island was eventually annexed by Chile in 1888, but its residents were not granted Chilean citizenship until 1966. Today, Easter Island is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, attracting researchers and tourists alike who are fascinated by its history and cultural heritage. The descendants of the Rapa Nui people continue to live on the island, maintaining their cultural traditions while integrating into the broader Chilean society. The Moai statues, standing as silent sentinels, remain a powerful testament to the ingenuity and resilience of the Rapa Nui. The Carthaginians. The Carthaginian civilization, founded in the 9th century BC by Phoenician settlers from Tyre, became a dominant power in the Mediterranean due to its strategic location and maritime prowess. Carthage, meaning new city in the Phoenician language, grew rapidly as a commercial hub, facilitating trade across the Mediterranean and beyond. According to legend, Queen Dido established Carthage around 814 BC, a date generally accepted by historians. However, the historicity of Queen Dido is not generally accepted amongst modern scholars, and was even questioned by ancient historians. Carthage's early years were marked by significant expansion and the establishment of numerous colonies. Its influence extended to North Africa, parts of Iberia, and various Mediterranean islands, including Sardinia and Sicily. Carthaginian society was heavily influenced by Phoenician culture, evident in their religious practices, art, and urban planning. Religion in Carthage was a continuation of the Phoenician polytheistic traditions, with chief gods such as Baal Hammon and Tanit. The Carthaginians also adopted deities from other cultures, including Greek and Egyptian gods, reflecting their extensive trade networks and cultural interactions. Carthage's military strength was initially based on its powerful navy, which controlled key maritime routes. The city employed a diverse array of mercenaries from various regions, including Iberians, Gauls, Numidians, and Greeks. These mercenaries were crucial in Carthage's numerous military campaigns, particularly during the Punic Wars against Rome. Notably, Carthage is one of the first civilizations to have been documented to be almost completely dependent upon mercenaries. The First Punic War from 264 to 241 BC marked the beginning of a protracted struggle between Carthage and Rome for dominance in the western Mediterranean. Despite initial successes, Carthage ultimately lost Sicily to Rome. The war highlighted Carthage's reliance on mercenary forces and the need for a more effective military strategy. Hamilcar Barca, a prominent Carthaginian general, played a crucial role in the aftermath of the First Punic War. He focused on expanding Carthaginian territories in Iberia, laying the groundwork for future confrontations with Rome. His son, Hannibal, would later become one of Carthage's most famous military leaders, and perhaps one of the most famous generals of all time. Hannibal's campaign during the Second Punic War from 218 to 201 BC is legendary for his daring crossing of the Alps to invade Italy, famously including a contingent of war elephants. Hannibal achieved several significant victories against Roman forces, including the famous Battle of Cannae in 216 BC, where his tactics nearly annihilated a much larger Roman army. Despite these successes, Hannibal was eventually forced to retreat to North Africa, where he was defeated by the equally legendary Roman general Scipio Africanus at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. The defeat at Zama marked a turning point for Carthage, from which it would never recover. The city was forced to cede its territories outside of North Africa and pay a substantial indemnity to Rome. Carthage's political and economic power waned, and it struggled to recover from the war's devastation. The final blow to Carthage came during the Third Punic War from 149 to 146 BC. Rome, determined to eliminate the Carthaginian threat once and for all, launched a brutal campaign against the city. After a lengthy siege, Roman forces breached Carthage's defenses, leading to the city's complete destruction. The surviving Carthaginian population was enslaved, and the city was systematically demolished, marking the end of the Carthaginian civilization. The salting of Carthage, an act following its destruction at the end of the Third Punic War, is a widely circulated but historically debated event. According to legend, Roman soldiers sowed the land with salt to ensure that Carthage could never rise again. However, contemporary historical accounts do not confirm this specific act, and it is likely a later embellishment symbolizing Rome's total eradication of Carthage. Given that Rome integrated the razed city into the Republic, it seems unlikely that they would have completely destroyed the economic output of a land they conquered so completely. Ultimately, Carthaginian civilization faded from history, while Roman civilization would influence the entire Western world, and then the entire world, up to the present day. And on that note, if you're enjoying this video, remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for more content like this. The Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, a Hellenistic state, emerged in Central Asia after the region seceded from the Seleucid Empire around 250 BC. This kingdom covered parts of modern Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and extended into Iran, Pakistan, and Kazakhstan. Known for its rich cities and fertile lands, Bactria was referred to as the Land of 1,000 Cities. The roots of Greek influence in Bactria can be traced back to the Persian Empire, when Greek communities were established under Persian rulers like Darius and Xerxes. This influence solidified after Alexander the Great conquered the region in 328 BC. Following Alexander's death, Bactria became part of the Seleucid Empire until the satrap of Bactria, Diodotus I, declared independence around 250 BC, establishing the Greco-Bactrian kingdom. Under kings like Diodotus and Euthydemus I, the Greco-Bactrian kingdom expanded significantly. Euthydemus I defended the kingdom against the Seleucid king Antiochus III, securing its autonomy. His son, Demetrius I, further expanded the territory into India, establishing the Indo-Greek kingdom, which will be discussed further on this iceberg. This expansion facilitated a unique cultural synthesis of Greek, Persian, and Indian elements, notably seen in art, especially sculptures, which are heavily influenced by Greek craftsmanship and know-how. The decline of the Greco-Bactrian kingdom began with its fragmentation due to internal strife and external pressures. The Parthian Empire's invasion around 150 BC significantly weakened the kingdom, resulting in the loss of western territories. This was followed by invasions from nomadic tribes such as the Yuezhi, who ultimately overran Bactria. By 130 BC, the Greco-Bactrian kingdom had collapsed, though the Indo-Greek kingdom south of the Hindu Kush persisted for another century before succumbing to nomadic invaders. The Sabines. The Sabines were an ancient Italic people who lived in the central Apennine Mountains of the Italian peninsula, particularly in the region known as Sabina. Their history is intricately linked with that of early Rome. The Sabines were divided into two main groups after the founding of Rome. One group integrated with the Romans, and another that remained in the mountains, maintaining a distinct tribal state until its eventual assimilation into the Roman Republic. The Sabines played a significant role in the early history of Rome. According to legend, one of the most notable interactions between the Sabines and the Romans was the event now often known as the abduction of the Sabine women. This event occurred when the early Romans, lacking women, abducted Sabine women during a festival. This led to a series of conflicts, culminating in a peace agreement where the Sabines and Romans united, with Sabine king Titus Tatius co-ruling with Romulus, Rome's founder. The Sabines' influence on Rome continued with the reign of Numa Pompilius, Rome's second king, who was of Sabine origin. His reign is noted for establishing many of Rome's religious and cultural institutions, some of which are traditionally said to be Sabine in nature. Throughout the early Republic, the Sabines were frequently in conflict with Rome. Notable wars occurred in the early 5th century BC, where the Sabines attacked Roman territory multiple times, but were eventually subdued. The final downfall of the Sabine civilization came during the Roman Republic's expansionist period. The Roman consul Manius Curius Dentatus led the conquest, subduing the Sabines and confiscating their lands for Roman settlers around 290 BC. This conquest effectively ended Sabine independence as their territories were annexed, and the Sabines were granted Roman citizenship, initially without voting rights, but later with full rights. Despite the fall of the Sabine civilization, the Sabines were eventually fully integrated into Roman civilization, with numerous families tracing their ancestry to these later Sabines. Notably, given that the Romans believed themselves to be the descendants of early Roman men and Sabine women, this ancestry was well accepted within Roman society, much more than other Italic peoples. The Incans. The Incan civilization, known for its remarkable achievements in architecture, agriculture, and governance, was one of the most significant pre-Columbian civilizations in the Americas. Originating in the Andean region, the Inca Empire became the largest empire in pre-Columbian America by the early 16th century, spanning modern-day Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, and Colombia. The Incas trace their origins to the Kingdom of Cusco, established around the 13th century. The transformation from a small city-state into a vast empire began under the leadership of Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui in the 15th century. Pachacuti and his successors expanded the empire through a combination of military conquest and peaceful assimilation. They integrated various cultures and regions into their sophisticated administrative system. The empire was divided into 4 districts, each governed by local leaders under the central authority of the Sapa Inca, who was considered a living god and the son of the sun. Inca society was highly organized and hierarchical. The Sapa Inca was at the top, followed by a nobility that included priests and military leaders. The common people were organized into kin groups, which formed the backbone of the labor system. The economy was based on agriculture, with innovative techniques such as terrace farming and irrigation, allowing the Incas to cultivate crops in the challenging Andean environment. The Incan economy also relied heavily on a labor system known as mita, which required citizens to work on various state projects in exchange for access to land and resources. And on a related note, the Incas were renowned for their engineering and architectural prowess. They built extensive road networks, known as the Capac Nan, which facilitated communication and transportation across the vast empire. These roads connected key administrative and religious centers, including the capital, Cusco, and the iconic citadel of Machu Picchu. Inca architecture is characterized by its finely crafted stonework, with structures designed to withstand earthquakes. Additionally, the Incas developed an impressive record-keeping system using knotted strings used to track resources and administrative detail. Religion played a central role in Inca society. The Incas worshipped a pantheon of gods, with Inti, the sun god, being the most important. Religious practices included elaborate ceremonies, offerings, and the construction of grand temples, such as the Coricancha in Cusco. The Incas also integrated the religious beliefs of conquered peoples, allowing for a syncretic religious environment, so long as there were no direct conflicts between beliefs. The downfall of the Inca Empire was precipitated by a combination of internal strife and external conquest. In the early 16th century, the empire was weakened by a civil war between the brothers Huascar and Atahualpa, following the death of their father, Huayna Capac. This conflict left the empire vulnerable to external threats. In 1532, Spanish conquistadors led by Francisco Pizarro arrived in the region. Taking advantage of the internal divisions and employing superior military technology, the Spanish captured Atahualpa during the Battle of Cajamarca. Despite a ransom being paid for his release, Atahualpa was slain, leading to further chaos and the eventual fall of Cusco in 1533. Notably, while the conquest had generally been portrayed as a small group of Spaniards conquering a vast empire by themselves, various local conquered peoples joined forces with the Spanish. The Spanish conquest, combined with the spread of European diseases such as smallpox, decimated the Incan population and disrupted their societal structures. By 1572, the last Inca stronghold was conquered, and the Spanish established the Viceroyalty of Peru, marking the end of the Inca Empire and the beginning of a new colonial era in South America. The history of the Trojan civilization centers around the ancient city of Troy, located in present-day Hisarlik, Turkey. The earliest settlements in Troy date back to around 3600 BC, with the city evolving into a small fortified urban center by 3000 BC. Troy's history is marked by a series of destructions and rebuildings, resulting in 9 archaeological layers, each representing different phases of its habitation. The Trojans were an Anatolian people with close cultural ties to other Anatolian peoples. Their strategic location near the Dardanelles Strait made Troy a significant trade and military hub. During the Late Bronze Age, Troy, known as Wilusa in Hittite texts, was a vassal state of the Hittite Empire, suggesting it was an influential city-state involved in regional politics. The most famous aspect of Trojan history is the Trojan War, a legendary conflict between the Achaean Greeks and the city of Troy. According to Greek mythology, the war was sparked by Paris of Troy abducting Helen, wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta. This event is immortalized in Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, although the historicity of the war remains debated among scholars. The war is traditionally dated to the 12th or 13th century BC, with many believing it represents a series of conflicts rather than a single event. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of a significant settlement at Hisarlik, with layers indicating destructions that align with the timeline of the Trojan War. Troy 7 in particular shows signs of a violent end, possibly correlating with the war described by Homer. This layer, dated to around the 12th century BC, reveals a city that was well fortified and densely populated, fitting the profile of the besieged Troy. The downfall of Troy marked the end of its prominence in the region. Post-destruction, the site saw periods of reoccupation during Greek and Roman times. However, the inhabitants were Greeks rather than Trojans. Modern excavations, beginning with Heinrich Schliemann in the 19th century, have brought to light many details about its extensive history. However, the exact relationship between myth and reality continues to be a subject of scholarly investigation. Remember to like and subscribe and check out the Patreon to support the channel further. Also check out my main channel, Lazy Chill Zone, where I discuss unsolved mysteries. I've attached the link to that channel in the comments. Welcome to part 2 of the Ancient Civilizations Iceberg, where we explore civilizations and societies, from the well-known to the extremely obscure, from how they rose to how they fell. Just a quick reminder that you can start anywhere in this series. Also, remember to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video if you enjoy it. The Gauls, as they are commonly known, were a group of Celtic tribes that inhabited a region of Western Europe, then known as Gaul. This area encompassed present-day France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and parts of Switzerland, the Netherlands, Germany, and northern Italy. The roots of Gallic civilization can be traced back to the first millennium BC, during which the Latien culture flourished across Gaul. This culture, known for its intricate metalwork and complex social structures, emerged around the 5th century BC and played a pivotal role in shaping the identity of the Gallic tribes. The Gauls were a warrior society, with their communities organized into numerous tribes, each led by a chieftain. These tribes were known for their fortified settlements, which served as both defensive strongholds and centers of trade and governance. The government structure of the Gallic civilization was highly decentralized, as with many tribal societies. Power was distributed among various independent tribes rather than being unified under a single central authority. Each tribe was led by a chieftain or king who held both military and judicial power. These leaders were often chosen from among the noble class and were supported by a council of elders or warriors. The Gallic tribes were never unified under a single ruler or government. Instead, they operated as independent entities, occasionally forming coalitions or alliances for mutual defense or during major military campaigns. These alliances, however, were temporary and lacked the stability of a unified state. Their deep internal divisions and lack of permanent unified governance would ultimately contribute to their downfall and subjugation by the Roman state. Religion played a central role in Gallic society, with the Druids acting as religious leaders, judges, and scholars. The Gallic pantheon was rich with deities, many of whom were later syncretized with Roman gods after the Roman conquest. This cultural amalgamation would give rise to what is known as Gallo-Roman culture, a blend of Gallic and Roman traditions that persisted even after the fall of the Roman Empire. The decline of Gallic independence began with the expansion of the Roman Republic. The Gauls first came into significant conflict with Rome during the 4th century BC, most notably when a Gallic army led by Brennus sacked Rome in 390 BC. This event marked one of the few times in history that the city of Rome was captured by a foreign force, leaving a lasting impression on Roman memory and policy. To put it in perspective, the next time the city of Rome itself would be occupied by invaders was by the Visigoths, almost 800 years later. The turning point for the Gauls and Gallic civilization came during the Gallic Wars, which ran from 58 BC to 50 BC. This conquest was famously led by Julius Caesar. These campaigns were a series of brutal military engagements in which the Roman legions systematically subdued the Gallic tribes. The most famous of these was the Battle of Alesia in 52 BC, where the Gallic chieftain Vercingetorix was defeated and captured, effectively ending organized resistance to Roman rule. Following this victory, Gaul was fully integrated into the Roman Republic as a province. After being conquered, Gaul remained a vital part of the Roman state for centuries. The Romanization of Gaul led to significant cultural changes. Over time, the Gallic language and many aspects of traditional Gallic culture were supplanted by Roman customs, Latin language, and Roman law. By the time of the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century AD, the distinct Gallic identity had largely faded, replaced by a Gallo-Roman culture. The final blow to any remaining Gallic independence came with the invasion of the Franks, a Germanic tribe that established the Merovingian kingdom. This marked the definitive end of the Gallic civilization as a distinct cultural and political entity, and the region transitioned into the early medieval period dominated by Frankish rule. However, the Frankish elites largely assimilated to the Gallo-Roman culture they found, and the mixture of these unique cultures would give rise to the French identity in time. Notably, while the Bretons have held by their unique Celtic culture within France for decades, as their name may indicate, they arrived in the region from Britain, fleeing the Anglo-Saxon invasion. The Babylonians. The Babylonian civilization, rooted in ancient Mesopotamia, was one of the earliest well-documented civilizations to emerge. Its legacy spans from the early 2nd millennium BC to its final decline in the 1st millennium BC, leaving behind a series of innovations in law, architecture, science, and culture. Babylonia emerged as a distinct entity around 1894 BC, during the reign of the Amorite chieftain Sumu Abum, who is traditionally considered the founder of Babylon as an independent state. Babylon was initially a small, relatively insignificant city-state in the vast and complex landscape of Mesopotamia, overshadowed by more powerful neighbors like Assyria. The rise of the Babylonian Empire is closely associated with Hammurabi, who ascended the throne in 1792 BC. Hammurabi's reign marked the consolidation of power in the region as he expanded Babylon's influence through a series of military campaigns and strategic alliances. By the end of his reign, Hammurabi had transformed Babylon from a small city-state into a powerful empire that dominated Mesopotamia. One of Hammurabi's most enduring legacies is the Code of Hammurabi, a comprehensive set of laws that provided the framework for justice in his empire. This legal code, inscribed on a stele for everyone to see, covered various aspects of daily life, including trade, marriage, and property rights. It is one of the earliest examples of written law in human history, and is perhaps the first time a ruler established that laws that exist should be knowable. Despite Hammurabi's successes, the empire he built was short-lived. Following his death, the empire gradually weakened under the rule of his successors, eventually falling to external pressures. In 1595 BC, the Hittites sacked Babylon, leading to a period of instability and the rise of various different peoples who would rule Babylon for centuries. After nearly a millennium of foreign domination and chaos, Babylon regained its independence and power in the late 7th century BC with the rise of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. This period is often regarded as a renaissance of Babylonian culture. The most famous ruler of this period was Nebuchadnezzar II, who reigned from 605 to 562 BC. Nebuchadnezzar is best known for his military conquests, including the capture of Jerusalem in 587 BC, which led to the Babylonian captivity of the Jewish people. He also embarked on ambitious construction projects, including the expansion of the city of Babylon and the construction of the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. However, it should be noted that the existence of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is highly controversial amongst historians. The Neo-Babylonian Empire's prominence was short-lived, much like the Old Babylonian Empire. The last king of Babylon, Nabonidus, faced internal strife and religious conflict, which weakened the empire. In 539 BC, the Persian king Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon, marking the end of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and the beginning of Persian rule over Mesopotamia. Under Persian rule, Babylon continued to be an important cultural and administrative center, but its political power had waned. The city eventually fell into decline, particularly after the Seleucid period, when it was eclipsed by new centers of power in the region. This city, once one of the greatest in the world, now lies in ruins in present-day Iraq. The Spartans. The history of Spartan civilization is a captivating tale of a society almost uniquely centered around military excellence and strict social order. Sparta, located in the region of Laconia in the southeastern Peloponnese, began as a small settlement in the Mycenaean era, running circa 1600 to 1100 BC. The Mycenaean civilization, known for its advanced architecture and complex societies, left behind ruins and artifacts that indicate a period of relative prosperity. However, the Dorian invasion around 1100 BC marked the end of the Mycenaean dominance and the beginning of what would eventually become the Spartan society. The Dorians, a Greek-speaking people from the north, settled in the region after subjugating the local populations. According to legend, the Heraclidae, descendants of Hercules, led this migration and established their rule over Laconia. This period saw the consolidation of Sparta from four villages into a single polis, or city-state, which later expanded its influence throughout the Peloponnese. The legendary figure Lycurgus is credited with establishing the foundations of Spartan society, although it is unclear whether he was a real person or a mythological character. The consensus amongst historians, while not universal, is that he is likely an amalgamation of several historical people into one mythical wise figure. The reforms of Lycurgus, known as the Great Retra, are said to have created the Spartan constitution, which organized the city-state around a militaristic and communal lifestyle. The focus was on creating disciplined warriors, with male citizens undergoing rigorous training from a young age in a unique system. This system emphasized endurance, strength, and loyalty to the state, which became the cornerstone of Spartan society. By the 7th century BC, Sparta had established itself as a dominant military power in Greece, largely due to its conquest of neighboring Messenia. The First and Second Messenian Wars resulted in the subjugation of the Messenians, who were turned into helots, or state-owned serfs, to work the land and support the Spartan economy. This period of expansion was marked by the establishment of a rigid social structure, with Spartiates at the top and helots at the very bottom. Notably, and this is often forgotten when discussing the Spartans, but the vast majority of the population were helots, whose services allowed the warrior class to flourish. Sparta's might reached its zenith during the Persian Wars in the 5th century BC, where it played a crucial role in defending Greece against the Persian Empire. The most famous Spartan contribution was at the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC, where King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans made a legendary last stand against the vastly superior Persian forces. Although the battle was lost, it became a symbol of courage and sacrifice, solidifying Sparta's reputation as the leading military power in Greece. The Peloponnesian War, which ran from 431 to 404 BC and was fought between Sparta and its allies, and Athens and its allies, marked the height of Spartan power. Sparta emerged victorious after a protracted conflict, thanks in large part to its formidable army and significant financial support from Persia. However, the war left Greece as a whole weakened. Sparta's harsh treatment of its allies and former enemies led to widespread resentment, eventually culminating in the rise of Thebes and the decisive defeat of Sparta at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC. Notably, this is the battle where the sacred band of Thebes distinguished themselves, a topic that will surely be discussed later in this series. After its defeat at Leuctra, Sparta never regained its former glory. The city-state continued to exist, but it was overshadowed by other rising powers such as Macedonia under Philip II and Alexander the Great. During the Hellenistic period, Sparta became more isolated, and its once rigid social structure began to erode. In 146 BC, Sparta fell under Roman control, and unlike many other parts of Greece, Sparta was spared significant devastation. The Romans were interested in the martial traditions of the Spartans and preserved Sparta, colonial Williamsburg style, for reasons of tourism and general interest. Notably, while Sparta declined and fell, the Spartan way of life, with its emphasis on austerity, discipline, and responsibility, fascinated both contemporary Greeks and later Western thinkers. This fascination is so significant that Spartans have become ingrained in contemporary society, from high school sports team mascots to appearances in film and television. The Aztecs. The Aztecs, a Mesoamerican civilization, were a dominant force in central Mexico from the 14th century to 1521. The term Aztec is often used to describe the Mexica people of Tenochtitlan, though it can also refer more broadly to various Nahuatl-speaking groups in central Mexico. The The term Aztec was not used contemporaneously and was proposed by the eminent German scientist Alexander von Humboldt in the early 19th century. Their civilization was characterized by a complex social, political, and religious structure, with Tenochtitlan, their capital city, serving as the epicenter of their empire. The origins of the Aztecs are traced back to the early 13th century, when the Nahua peoples, including the Mexica, migrated from what is now northern Mexico into the Valley of Mexico. This migration led them to the shores of Lake Texcoco, where they established the city of Tenochtitlan in 1325. The location of Tenochtitlan was determined by a prophecy which said that they would find an eagle perched on a cactus with a snake in its beak. If you're knowledgeable about flags, as I assume many of you are, this symbol should be familiar to you as the coat of arms appearing on the Mexican flag. Before establishing Tenochtitlan, the Mexica served as mercenaries for other city-states in the region. Their position as warriors for hire allowed them to gain valuable experience and recognition, setting the stage for their eventual rise to power. Despite starting on less fertile land, the strategic location of Tenochtitlan on an island in Lake Texcoco provided natural defenses and opportunities for agricultural innovation. The Mexica are thought to have invented or innovated upon a form of floating gardens, which supported a growing population around Lake Texcoco. In 1427, the Mexica of Tenochtitlan formed the Aztec Triple Alliance with two other city-states, Texcoco and Tlacopan. This alliance was initially a means of uniting forces to overthrow the city-state of Azcapotzalco, which had previously dominated the region. After their victory, Tenochtitlan emerged as the dominant partner in the alliance, effectively becoming the capital of the Aztec Empire. The Aztec Empire was not a centralized state, but rather a hegemonic empire that exerted control through a network of tributary city-states. These client states were allowed to retain their local rulers as long as they paid tribute and provided military support when required. This tribute system was crucial for maintaining the empire's wealth and power. The Aztecs used their military might to expand their territory, at one point extending their control from central Mexico to regions as far south as modern-day Guatemala. Aztec society was highly stratified, with a clear division between the nobility and commoners. The emperor held supreme authority and was considered semi-divine. The nobility controlled land and resources, while the commoners worked the land, served in the military, or participated in various public works. Religion played a central role in Aztec life, with the pantheon of gods being closely tied to natural elements and human activities. Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun, was particularly revered, and his worship involved large-scale human sacrifices, believed to ensure the sun's continued movement across the sky. It is, of course, impossible to talk about these sacrifices without discussing the highly unusual way the people sacrificed were captured. The Flower Wars were a unique type of ritualized warfare practiced by the Aztecs and their neighboring city-states, primarily during the 15th and early 16th centuries. These wars were distinct from traditional conquests, as their primary purpose was not to capture territory or expand the empire, but to capture prisoners for religious sacrifices. The origin of flower wars is often linked to a series of natural disasters, including droughts and famines, that the Aztecs believed were signs of divine displeasure. The Aztec leadership sought to appease their gods, especially Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, by ensuring a steady supply of sacrificial victims. The ritual nature of these conflicts also served as a means to train warriors and reinforce alliances between participating city-states. Combatants in flower wars were expected to engage in battle according to strict rules, with an emphasis on individual combat and the taking of captives. The captives taken during these wars were later sacrificed in elaborate public ceremonies, which the Aztecs believed would sustain the gods and, in turn, ensure the continuation of the world. These sacrifices, often involving prisoners of war, were conducted in grand ceremonies at the Templo Mayor in Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs also developed a sophisticated calendrical system that included both a 365-day solar calendar and a shorter ritual calendar. These calendars were used to time agricultural activities, religious ceremonies, and the planning of wars. Additionally, the Aztecs made significant advancements in art, architecture, and education, with codices being a primary method of recording history, religious practices, and daily life. The downfall of the Aztec Empire began with the arrival of Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés in 1519. Notably, by the time of his arrival, Cortés discovered Tenochtitlan to be a massive city, and though he didn't realize it, it was one of the largest cities in the world at the time. Cortés exploited existing tensions between the Aztecs and other indigenous groups, forming alliances with enemies of the Aztecs. After a series of battles and a devastating smallpox epidemic that weakened the indigenous population, the Spanish and their allies laid siege to Tenochtitlan in 1521. The siege culminated on August 13, 1521, with the fall of this impressively large city. Montezuma II, the Aztec emperor at the time of the Spanish arrival, was initially captured and later killed under unclear circumstances. His successors tried to resist the Spanish but ultimately failed. The city was razed, and the Spanish established Mexico City on the ruins of Tenochtitlan, marking the end of the Aztec Empire and the beginning of Spanish colonial rule in Mexico. Notably, the Nahuatl language continues to be spoken by the Nahua people in Mexico until this day, with approximately 1.5% of the total population speaking the language. Remember to check out my main channel, Lazy Chill Zone, where I discuss unsolved mysteries and true crime topics. The link is in the comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. And if you didn't like it, feel free to hit that dislike button too. You know where it is. Also, welcome to part 3 of the Ancient Civilizations Iceberg, where we explore civilizations and societies from the well-known to the extremely obscure, from how they rose to how they fell. In this episode, we'll be discussing civilizations such as Mycenaean Greeks, the Phoenicians, the Akkadians, and more. Also remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell and share this video with your friends and family. The Mycenaean civilization, flourishing between approximately 1600 BC and 1100 BC, represents the first advanced Greek society on the mainland. The origins of the Mycenaean civilization are rooted in the migration of Indo-European peoples into the Greek peninsula around 2000 BC. These early Greeks assimilated with existing Neolithic populations, leading to the emergence of the Helladic culture. By 1600 BC, distinctive features of the Mycenaean civilization began to crystallize, marked by advances in metallurgy, pottery, and the establishment of complex socio-political structures. The rise of the Mycenaeans coincided with increased contact with the Minoan civilization of Crete. Through trade and possibly conquest, the Mycenaeans absorbed aspects of Minoan culture, including art and religious practices. However, they developed their own identity, characterized by a warrior ethos and a focus on fortifications, military prowess, and individual heroism in battle. At the heart of Mycenaean society were the fortified palace complexes at sites like Mycenae, Pylos, and Thebes. These palatial centers served as administrative and economic hubs, overseeing agriculture, trade, and production. The palaces featured megarons, large central halls with a hearth that served as throne rooms and places for ceremonial functions. Art and architecture flourished under the Mycenaeans, contrary to what one might expect from a warrior society. They were skilled in various crafts, including pottery, fresco painting, and metalwork. The famous Mask of Agamemnon, a gold funerary mask discovered by Heinrich Schliemann at Mycenae, exemplifies their expertise in goldsmithing. Mycenaean pottery, characterized by elegant shapes and decorative motifs, was widely traded and highly desired throughout the Mediterranean. The development of Linear B script was also a significant achievement for the society and for subsequent Greek societies. Deciphered in 1952 by Michael Ventris, Linear B is an early form of Greek used primarily for administrative purposes. The tablets reveal an early bureaucratic society with detailed records of goods, personnel, and religious offerings, underscoring the complexity of Mycenaean administrative systems. Social structure was extremely hierarchical, as one may expect from a warrior society. The king, known in Mycenaean Greek as the Wanax, held supreme authority both politically and religiously. Another societal role, known as the Lauagetas, possibly acted as a leading military commander for the king. Local governors appear to have been placed in charge of regions by the king. Below the elite were free citizens, artisans, farmers, and laborers, with bonded laborers being at the bottom of the societal pyramid. The Mycenaean economy was fairly complex and dynamic, especially for its time. Agriculture formed the backbone, with crops like wheat, barley, olives, and grapes cultivated extensively. Animal husbandry was important, with sheep and goats providing wool and meat. Notably, craftsmanship, as discussed, was highly developed, and luxury goods were produced. For instance, the Mycenaean Greeks are noted to have manufactured not only combat-ready weaponry, but ornamental weaponry as well, indicating a wealthy society with a taste for opulence. Notably, the Mycenaean trade networks extended across the Mediterranean and potentially beyond. Mycenaean pottery has been found in Egypt, Italy, Anatolia, and the Levant, evidencing extensive maritime trade. Religion was integral to Mycenaean life, and will be quite familiar to anyone who has a passing familiarity with Hellenic religion generally. The pantheon included deities that would later feature prominently in classical Greek mythology. Names like Zeus, Poseidon, and Dionysus appear in Linear B tablets, suggesting continuity in religious beliefs. Religious practices involved offerings and sacrifices to the gods, with shrines and sanctuaries located within palaces and the surrounding countryside. Notably, the role of the priesthood is not entirely clear in this society, but given the significant amount of religious art produced, scholars theorize they likely held significant influence. The Mycenaeans were characterized by their militaristic nature, and fortifications were a hallmark of their architecture. Citadels were protected by massive walls constructed with large, unworked stones, known as Cyclopean masonry, due to the later Greeks' belief that only giants could have moved such blocks. Military equipment included bronze swords, spears, shields, and armor. The Dendra panoply, a set of full-body bronze armor discovered in Dendra, Greece of all places, reflects advanced metallurgical skills. Chariots played a role in warfare, as depicted in frescoes and mentioned in Linear B tablets. Warfare and conquest are theorized to have been instrumental in expanding Mycenaean influence. Some scholars suggest involvement in conflicts like the legendary Trojan War, immortalized by Homer, although the historical accuracy of these accounts remains hotly contested. Around 1200 BC, the Mycenaean civilization began to decline. Palaces were destroyed or abandoned, trade networks collapsed, and writing largely ceased. Several theories attempt to explain this downfall, which is now well known as the Late Bronze Age collapse. Some suggestions by scholars include natural disasters, invasions by the Sea Peoples, and civil strife. Most scholars now agree that any one precise cause is not likely the case, and it's likely that this was caused by a combination of factors. The result was a period known as the Greek Dark Ages, lasting until around 800 BC, during which population declined and many aspects of Mycenaean culture were lost. Despite the collapse, the Mycenaeans left a lasting legacy that strongly impacted subsequent Greek culture. Oral traditions preserve the memory of Mycenaean heroes and events, eventually becoming the epic tales of Homer. The Iliad and the Odyssey reflect a world that, while composed centuries later, calls back to Mycenaean times. Also, it's important to remember that architectural and technological advancements persisted to some degree and re-emerged after the Greek Dark Ages. Metallurgical techniques and artistic styles were later rediscovered and adopted by subsequent Greek cultures. Further, the warrior ethos that focused on heroic displays of power associated with this culture was later picked up by other Greek cultures such as the Spartans. Given the level of influence on classical Greece and the level of influence classical Greece had upon the world subsequently, the influence of Mycenaean civilization can't be understated. The Akkadian Empire, which flourished from 2334 to 2154 BC, is one of the most significant early civilizations in human history. It is often credited as the world's first empire, and is always credited as the first Mesopotamian empire, and its rise marked a pivotal moment in the ancient Near East. The Akkadian Empire was founded by Sargon of Akkad, a figure of legend, but whose historical impact is undisputed. Sargon established Akkad as a central hub for his empire, located along the Euphrates River. Unlike previous rulers, Sargon did not simply expand his own city-state. He forged a new model of empire building by conquering cities, uniting a vast territory under his centralized authority. His military campaigns extended as far as the Mediterranean and into modern-day Iran, effectively laying the foundation for an empire that controlled trade routes and political alliances across Mesopotamia. Sargon's successors, notably his grandson Naram-Sin, continued his expansionist policies and maintained the empire's dominance. Naram-Sin, in particular, declared himself a god, elevating his status beyond that of a mere king, and ruled with the title King of the Four Corners of the Universe. This title reflected not only his control over a large geographical area, but also his ideological dominance. Notably, this title would be claimed by numerous Mesopotamian and Persian rulers over the next 2 millennia. The Akkadians' competitive advantage, so to speak, was that they were remarkable administrators. To maintain control over such a vast empire, Sargon and his successors developed an advanced bureaucratic system. The empire was divided into provinces, each governed by officials loyal to the king. These officials, many of whom were Akkadians, were responsible for maintaining order, collecting taxes, and enforcing laws. The Akkadian Empire also standardized weights and measures, an essential reform that facilitated trade and commerce across diverse regions. One of the most enduring legacies of the Akkadian Empire was its postal system. This was an early form of organized communication, where clay tablets were sealed and delivered across the empire. This system not only helped maintain governance, but also allowed for the dissemination of legal decrees, trade agreements, and diplomatic correspondence. In terms of culture, the Akkadian Empire fostered a unique fusion of Sumerian and Akkadian traditions. Sumerian was retained as the language of religion and literature, while Akkadian became the language of administration and commerce. The Akkadian language and cuneiform script became the dominant tools of communication in the region, influencing later civilizations, including the Babylonians and Assyrians. The Akkadians also contributed substantially to the development of early literature. Enheduanna, Sargon's daughter, is widely recognized as the world's first known author, having composed hymns to the goddess Inanna. The Akkadian Empire is often remembered for its military prowess. Sargon and his successors, particularly Naram Sin, led numerous military campaigns, expanding the empire's boundaries and solidifying its dominance. Naram Sin's famous victory stele, which depicts him triumphing over the Lullubi tribe, is a powerful symbol of Akkadian military strength. These campaigns not only brought wealth and resources to Akkad, but also established the empire as a formidable power that influenced neighboring regions from Anatolia to the Persian Gulf. The empire's military innovations also had a lasting impact. Sargon is credited with organizing a standing army, which included specialized units such as archers and spearmen. This level of military organization was unprecedented at the time and allowed the Akkadians to effectively control a vast and diverse territory. Despite its remarkable achievements, the Akkadian Empire eventually fell into decline for reasons which are generally considered to be poorly understood. Environmental factors, such as droughts and changes in agricultural productivity, likely played a significant role. The empire's vast territory also made it difficult to manage, leading to internal revolts and external invasions, particularly from various nomadic groups. These pressures culminated in the fall of Akkad around 2154 BC. The legacy of the Akkadian Empire, however, lived on. Its administrative practices, military innovations, and cultural achievements were adopted by later Mesopotamian civilizations. The Akkadian language continued to be used for centuries as a diplomatic language, and its literature, particularly the Epic of Gilgamesh, influenced cultures far beyond Mesopotamia. Göbekli Tepe, located in southeastern Turkey, has been hailed as the world's oldest known temple complex and the oldest known human building. Dating back over 11,000 years, this site was constructed by early Neolithic humans, during a period when farming and settled life were still in their infancy. The site consists of large circular structures known as enclosures, each containing massive T-shaped stone pillars. These pillars, some towering over 5 meters high, are adorned with intricate carvings of animals like snakes, vultures, wild boars, and foxes, often depicted in relief. These carvings are believed to have had symbolic significance, potentially relating to religious or spiritual practices. Interestingly, no evidence of permanent habitation has been found at Göbekli Tepe, suggesting that it was a ceremonial site for semi-nomadic hunter-gatherers rather than a village or town. One of the most remarkable aspects of Göbekli Tepe is the advanced engineering and organization required to build it. The people who constructed this site did so without metal tools or domesticated animals, raising questions about how they managed to transport and erect the enormous stone pillars. This has led archaeologists to hypothesize that Göbekli Tepe may have been a gathering place where different groups of people came together for religious rituals or social events. Excavations at Göbekli Tepe have revealed 3 main levels of construction. The oldest, known as Level 3, features the most complex and monumental architecture, including large stone circles with richly carved pillars. Later levels, particularly Level 2, show a shift towards more rectangular enclosures, indicating a possible evolution in architectural style over time. Interestingly, the oldest level appears to be the most advanced, raising questions about how and why construction techniques seem to have regressed in later phases. The carvings on the pillars are not just decorative, but are believed to be deeply symbolic, possibly representing totems or spiritual beliefs. For example, Enclosure A is dominated by carvings of snakes, which may have had mythological or religious importance in the region. Similarly, Enclosure C features depictions of wild boars, while enclosure B is known for its carvings of foxes. These animal motifs are repeated throughout the site and seem to reflect a sophisticated symbolic system consistent with early spiritual or religious beliefs. One of the most intriguing mysteries surrounding the site is its intentional burial. Around 8000 BC, the entire site was deliberately covered with dirt, preserving it for millennia. The reasons for this burial remain unclear, though some researchers speculate it could have been part of a ritual or a way to mark the end of its use. Others suggest it may have been an effort to preserve the sanctity of the site, or simply a practical measure as the site fell out of use. New discoveries continue to emerge from Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe has upended previous theories about the development of human civilization. Before its discovery, it was widely believed that large, complex societies could only develop after the advent of agriculture. However, Göbekli Tepe demonstrates that even hunter-gatherers were capable of organizing large-scale construction projects and engaging in complex social and religious activities. Some scholars now believe that sites like Göbekli Tepe may have played a role in the eventual transition to agriculture. These scholars suggest the need to feed and organize large groups of people in the area could have led to the increased domestication of plants and animals. The civilization responsible for building Göbekli Tepe remains largely mysterious, as no written records or clear evidence of a unified political structure have been found. The builders of Göbekli Tepe are theorized to have lived in small, mobile groups and relied on foraging, hunting, and fishing for survival. Today, Göbekli Tepe is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and continues to be a focus of archaeological research. The Sumerian civilization, flourishing between 5500 and 1900 BC in southern Mesopotamia, is widely regarded as one of the world's first urban societies. Nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Sumer was a collection of city-states that made significant contributions to human history. These contributions included little things such as the invention of writing, agriculture, and the establishment of legal codes, amongst others. The legacy of the Sumerians is profound, laying the groundwork for future civilizations in the region and influencing every aspect of modern society. The Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia provided the Sumerians with rich alluvial soil for agriculture, thanks to the silt deposited by the annual flooding of the twin rivers. This abundance allowed for surplus production, which in turn supported urban growth and the development of complex societies. Prominent city-states like Uruk, Ur, Lagash, and Eridu emerged, each functioning as independent political entities, but sharing a common language, culture, and religious beliefs. These city-states were often enclosed by walls and featured monumental architecture, including temples and palaces, symbolizing their wealth and power. One of the most remarkable achievements of the Sumerians was the development of cuneiform writing around 3200 BC. Initially created for record-keeping purposes, such as tracking agricultural produce and trade transactions, it evolved to a complex system of abstract symbols inscribed on clay tablets. This innovation not only facilitated administrative tasks, but also paved the way for literature, legal documents, and scholarly works. The Epic of Gilgamesh, written in Akkadian using Sumerian script, is one of the earliest known works of literary fiction, exploring themes of heroism and friendship. As could be expected, agriculture was the backbone of the Sumerian economy. They engineered an intricate system of irrigation canals and reservoirs to control the unpredictable flooding of the rivers and to distribute water to their fields. This system maximized agricultural productivity, supporting a growing population and enabling the specialization of labor. Crops such as barley, wheat, flax, and dates were cultivated, and surplus produce became a commodity for trade, laying the foundation for early trade networks in the region. The Sumerians are credited with the invention of the earliest wheel around 3500 BC, which revolutionized transport, pottery making, and warfare. They also developed metallurgy techniques, working with copper and bronze to create tools, weapons, and ornaments, marking the beginning of the Bronze Age in the region. Innovations like the plow and the sailboat further enhanced their agricultural efficiency and trade capabilities. Sumerian society was highly stratified, with a clear hierarchy that structured their social interactions and responsibilities. At the top were the ruling elites, including kings and priests, who wielded both political and religious power. The king was often seen as a mediator between the gods and the people, responsible for maintaining order and ensuring the prosperity of the city-state. Below the ruling class were the merchants, artisans, and scribes. Scribes held a prestigious position due to their literacy and role in administration and record-keeping. Artisans and craftsmen produced goods ranging from pottery to intricate jewelry to weaponry. Farmers and laborers formed the bulk of the population, working the lands and providing the necessary labor for construction projects. Bonded labor, often prisoners of war or debtors, occupied the lowest rung of society and were largely used for dangerous manual labor that free people would not engage in. In particular, their labor is thought to have been used extensively for activities such as mining. Each city-state was governed by its own set of laws and administrative systems. The Sumerians developed some of the earliest known legal codes, such as the Code of Ur-Nammu, dating back to around 2100 BC, which predated the famous Code of Hammurabi by several centuries. Unfortunately for King Ur-Nammu, it would seem that the early bird sometimes doesn't get the worm, but I digress. These laws covered various aspects of society, including property rights, marriage, and criminal justice, and were aimed at establishing justice and social order. Religion played a central role in Sumerian life, influencing their politics, culture, and daily activities. They were polytheistic, worshipping a pantheon of gods associated with natural forces and celestial bodies. Major deities included Anu, the sky god, Enlil, the god of air and storms, Enki, the god of water and wisdom, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. Each city-state had a patron deity, and temples were specifically dedicated to their worship. Temples, or ziggurats, were monumental pyramid-like structures that served as religious and administrative centers. These terraced pyramid-like buildings dominated the city skyline and were believed to connect the heavens and the earth. Priests conducted rituals, offerings, and ceremonies to appease the gods, seeking their favor for prosperity, protection, and guidance. Sumerian society made significant military developments that shaped the early history of warfare. As one of the world's earliest civilizations, the Sumerians developed the first organized armies. The military forces of Sumer were composed mainly of infantry, who were equipped with weapons like spears, axes, and bows. One notable innovation was the use of the phalanx, a dense formation of soldiers armed with spears and shields, which allowed for coordinated and disciplined attacks. The Sumerians also employed the earliest known use of chariots in warfare, though these chariots were heavier and slower than later models adopted by other civilizations. Warfare in Sumer was closely tied to the city-states' rulers, who often led their armies into battle. Rulers were known for their unending military campaigns that expanded their city's influence and established dominance over rival city-states. Artistic expression flourished in Sumer, evident in their intricate sculptures, mosaics, and jewelry. They excelled in craftsmanship, producing items that showcased their skill and aesthetic sensibilities. Cylinder seals, carved with detailed scenes and inscriptions, were used to authenticate documents and secure containers, serving both practical and artistic purposes. Music and dance were integral parts of their culture, often associated with religious ceremonies and social gatherings. Instruments such as harps, lyres, and drums have been discovered in archaeological sites, indicating a strong musical tradition in Sumerian society. The Sumerian civilization laid the foundational elements for subsequent cultures in Mesopotamia and beyond. Their innovations in writing, law, technology, and urban planning influenced neighboring societies, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The concept of the city-state, codified laws, and administrative practices were adopted and adapted by these cultures to great effect. By around 1900 BC, the Sumerian city-states began to decline due to various factors such as internal strife, economic difficulties, and invasions by neighboring peoples. Notably, there is some evidence to indicate that Sumerians engaged in over-irrigation, which subsequently lowered crop yields and weakened their society. The Phoenicians were an ancient civilization that thrived along the eastern Mediterranean coast, primarily in present-day Lebanon from around 1500 BC to around 300 BC. Despite being overshadowed by neighboring empires, the Phoenicians left a significant mark on history through their advancements in navigation, trade, and the development of the alphabet. Emerging from a region with limited arable land, the Phoenicians turned to the sea as their gateway to prosperity. They became masterful shipbuilders and navigators, crafting sturdy vessels capable of withstanding long voyages across treacherous waters. Utilizing the North Star for navigation, they ventured beyond the traditional confines of the Mediterranean, possibly reaching as far as the British Isles in search of tin and other valuable resources. Also, of course, I have to briefly mention that there is a well-known theory that the Phoenicians were the first Old World peoples to discover the Americas. This theory is largely dismissed by scholars who observe that while it may have theoretically been possible with Phoenician technology, there's simply no good actual evidence for it. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to established Phoenician history. Trade was the cornerstone of Phoenician society and what allowed this comparatively tiny society to punch far above its weight. They established an extensive network of trade routes that connected various civilizations, including the Egyptians, Greeks, and Mesopotamians. The Phoenicians traded goods such as cedar wood, prized for its quality and durability, which was used in constructing palaces and temples, including Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. They were also renowned for their production of glass and luxury items adorned with intricate designs, reflecting a high level of craftsmanship. One of their most lucrative industries was the production of Tyrian purple dye. Extracted from the murex sea snail found along the Levantine coast, the dye produced a rich purple hue that became synonymous with royalty and power. The complex and labor-intensive extraction process made the dye extremely valuable, and garments colored with Tyrian purple were coveted by elites across the ancient world. The Phoenicians were not just traders, but also quite famously colonizers as well. To support and expand their trade networks, they established colonies and settlements throughout the Mediterranean, the most notable being Carthage in North Africa around 800 BC. Carthage grew to become a powerful city-state in its own right, with its own colonies, especially in Iberia, and eventually challenging Rome for dominance in the Western Mediterranean during the Punic Wars. These colonies served as vital hubs for commerce, resource acquisition, and cultural exchange, spreading Phoenician influence far beyond their homeland. A monumental contribution of the Phoenicians was the development of the alphabet. Prior writing systems, such as Egyptian hieroglyphs and Mesopotamian cuneiform, were complex and required extensive learning. These systems required a highly educated class of scribes and bureaucrats, and even modest degrees of literacy were uncommon even amongst other elites. The Phoenician alphabet, consisting of 22 consonant letters, was a revolutionary simplification. This phonetic system allowed for more straightforward writing and reading, making literacy accessible to a broader segment of the population. The Greeks adopted and adapted this alphabet by adding vowels, which then influenced the Latin script, and consequently our present alphabet. Simply put, the Phoenician alphabet laid the foundation for written communication in the Western world. Culturally, the Phoenicians were adept at assimilating and merging influences from the civilizations they interacted with. Their art and religious practices reflected a syncretism of Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and local Canaanite traditions. They worshipped a pantheon of gods, with Baal and Astarte being prominent deities. Religious rituals often involved offerings and ceremonies intended to secure the favor of the gods for safe voyages and prosperous trade. And as you may imagine, being a seafaring people, the Phoenicians were more concerned with currying divine favor than most groups. Despite their significant contributions, the Phoenicians did not form a unified nation-state. Instead, they were organized into independent city-states such as Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, each governed by its own king and ruling elite. This political fragmentation made them vulnerable to conquest by emerging powers like the Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians, who sought control over the lucrative trade routes. However, even under foreign domination, the Phoenicians continued their commercial activities, often serving as intermediaries between empires. Despite their innovations in writing, the scarcity of written records from the Phoenicians themselves has posed challenges for historians. Much of what is known comes from archaeological findings and accounts by other ancient cultures, notably the Greeks and Romans, who sometimes viewed them with a mix of admiration and suspicion. The decline of the Phoenicians began with the rise of powerful empires and the shifting political landscape. The conquest of their cities by Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC marked the end of Phoenician autonomy and the beginning of the Hellenization of their culture. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. The Cumans were a formidable nomadic people who roamed the Eurasian steppes between the 10th and 13th centuries. Originating from the region that's now modern-day Kazakhstan, they played a significant role in the history of Eastern Europe and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Cumans, also known as the Palavcians in Russian chronicles, were Turkic-speaking nomads. Cumans were a highly diverse group phenotypically, with some exhibiting stereotypical Northern European looks, others exhibiting stereotypical East Asian looks, and everything in between. Their society was predominantly pastoral, relying heavily on the herding of horses, sheep, and cattle. Like other nomadic people, they lived in yurts, portable, circular tents made of felt or skins that allowed them to move easily across the vast steppes. Cuman society was organized around tribal lines. Leadership was typically held by khans, who were both military leaders and political figures. These leaders were often from noble families, and their authority was based on both lineage and personal prowess. Loyalty to the tribe and the khan was paramount, and social cohesion was maintained through kinship ties and shared traditions. The Cumans practiced a form of shamanism, worshiping natural forces and ancestral spirits, often called Tengrism today, based upon the chief deity, Tengri, the god of the sky. Shamans played a crucial role in their society, acting as intermediaries between the physical and spiritual worlds. With the expansion of neighboring states, some Cumans began to convert to Christianity and Islam depending upon where they settled. Cumans who eventually settled in the Balkans and Hungary adopted Christianity, while those who settled in Anatolia tended to adopt Islam. The political landscape of the Cumans was fluid, characterized by shifting alliances and rivalries. They didn't establish a traditional centralized state, but operated through a confederation of tribes, which at its height spread across the Eurasian steppe from Hungary to China. The Cumans had complex relationships with their neighbors. They often clashed with the Kievan Rus, but also served as mercenaries and allies when interests aligned. Their interactions with the Byzantine Empire were similarly multifaceted, involving both warfare and trade. The Cumans played a pivotal role in regional politics, sometimes tipping the balance of power through their alliances and mercenary services. In the late 11th century, the Cumans formed a confederation with the Kipchaks, another Turkic nomadic group. This alliance strengthened their military capabilities and extended their influence from the Danube to the Volga River. The Confederation became a significant force until the Mongol invasions shattered the nomadic power structures in the 13th century. Warfare was an integral part of Cuman life, with their nomadic lifestyle and expertise in horsemanship making them formidable opponents on the battlefield. As you may have been able to guess, the Cumans were exceptional horsemen and archers. They employed the composite bow, a powerful weapon made from wood, horn, and sinew, which took incredible strength to properly draw. Mounted archery allowed them to execute hit-and-run tactics, harassing enemy formations and retreating before a counterattack could be organized. They used feigned retreats to lure enemies into ambushes and relied on their knowledge of the terrain. Their tactics were well suited to the open steppes, where maneuverability was a decisive factor. The Cumans also utilized psychological warfare, employing intimidation tactics such as rapid, unpredictable attacks to unnerve their foes. Much like the Mongols later on, their opponents often vastly overestimated the size of their armies, as their mobility led to their hosts being double counted, so to speak. The Cumans weren't just expert archers. They also wielded sabers, lances, and shields. They wore light armor made from leather or padded cloth, which didn't impede their movement. Some warriors donned mail or other forms of heavier armor, especially those of higher status, who could afford better protection. The Mongol invasions destroyed the Cuman-Kipchak confederations, with many of the surviving Cumans joining up and assimilating to Tatar culture. However, many Cumans chose to migrate westward. Some were assimilated into Hungarian society, where they were granted land in exchange for military service. Notably, the Cumans ended up holding such influence in Hungary that by the end of the 13th century, a Cuman noblewoman, Elizabeth, had become the queen consort of Hungary, then the regent for her son. Her son would later go on to be crowned Ladislaus IV, better known to history by his nickname, the Cuman. The Clovis culture represents one of the earliest well-established human societies in North America. Flourishing around 13,000 years ago, these prehistoric people are best known for their distinctive stone tools and their significant role in shaping early human history on the continent. The Clovis culture was first identified in the 1930s near Clovis, New Mexico, where archaeologists uncovered unique projectile points. These Clovis points became the hallmark of the culture, showcasing advanced stone tool technology of the Paleo-Indian period. The widespread distribution of these artifacts across North America indicates a rapid expansion and adaptation of the Clovis people to diverse environments. Clovis people are believed to have descended from Asian populations who migrated to North America via the Bering Land Bridge during the last ice age. This migration marks a pivotal event in human history, representing one of the earliest known movements of humans into the New World. The adaptability and innovation of the Clovis culture facilitated their spread across vast territories, from the northern plains to the southern regions of the present-day United States. The most distinctive feature of the Clovis culture is their sophisticated stone tool technology. Clovis points are finely crafted spearheads with a characteristic flute or groove at the base, allowing them to be securely attached to spear shafts. This innovation improved hunting efficiency, particularly in pursuing large game like mammoths and mastodons. Their toolkit included not only spear points but also knives and scrapers, essential for processing animal hides and other materials necessary for survival. While direct evidence of Clovis social structures is limited due to the prehistoric context, archaeological findings suggest they lived in small, mobile bands. These groups likely consisted of extended families that cooperated in hunting and gathering activities, essential for their nomadic lifestyle. Cooperation within groups was crucial, especially in hunting large prey that required coordinated efforts. Social bonds were probably strengthened through shared rituals and traditions, although specific cultural practices remain largely unknown. Leadership roles in Clovis societies were likely based on experience and skill, particularly in hunting and tool-making. Decision-making processes were probably communal, reflecting the egalitarian nature of small hunter-gatherer groups. There's no evidence of complex political structures or hierarchies, suggesting that Clovis polities were relatively simple, though like many things with prehistoric people we can't know for certain. Due to the scarcity of direct evidence, specific details about Clovis warfare are speculative, though experts do believe that raiding activity was almost certainly engaged in. It's thought that the advanced weaponry developed for hunting could have been employed in conflicts as well. The Clovis economy, so to speak, is thought to be heavily reliant on hunting megafauna. Evidence from hunting sites shows they targeted large animals like mammoths, mastodons, and ancient bison. This focus on big game hunting required sophisticated tools and coordinated group strategies. In addition to hunting, Clovis groups gathered plant foods, small game, and other resources to supplement their diet. This diversified subsistence strategy was vital for survival, especially during periods when large game was scarce. While there is limited evidence of anything approximating trade networks, the widespread distribution of Clovis points made from non-local materials suggests some level of interaction between groups. Some theories propose that intensive hunting by Clovis people contributed to the extinction of several megafauna species. However, this remains a topic of debate, with changing weather patterns during the Pleistocene also considered a significant factor. The Clovis culture holds a crucial place in understanding the early peopling of the Americas. Their technological innovations, particularly in tool making, set the foundation for subsequent Native American cultures. While much about their society remains a mystery at present, ongoing archaeological research continues to shed light on these early inhabitants of North America. The Numidians, an ancient people who inhabited present-day Algeria, as well as parts of Tunisia and Libya, played an important role in the history of the Mediterranean. Despite being overshadowed by their more powerful neighbors, the Numidians developed a distinct identity and maintained a strong presence in North Africa for several centuries. The Numidians were divided into two major tribal groups, one in the east and one in the west. Initially, these two factions operated independently, but during the Second Punic War, King Massinissa successfully unified them into a single kingdom called Numidia. Massinissa's reign was a pivotal moment for the Numidians, transforming them from a loose collection of tribes into a centralized state allied with Rome and playing a significant role in the regional geopolitics. Numidian society was characterized by both nomadic and sedentary lifestyles. Many Numidians were pastoralists, living in the arid regions of North Africa and moving their herds to different grazing areas throughout the year. However, there were also settled communities, particularly in areas near the coast and in the capital city. Sirta. These settled groups engaged in agriculture, and under Massinissa's reign, there was a push toward intensive farming practices, including the cultivation of wheat, barley, olives, and grapes. This focus on agriculture helped Numidia become an important breadbasket for the Roman Empire in subsequent years. The presence of oil presses and Punic-style buildings in Sirta suggests that Numidian culture was significantly influenced by their interactions with Carthage. The Numidian political landscape was dominated by a system of tribal kingships, where authority was concentrated in the hands of local rulers. Before unification, the two major tribes in the east and west were led by their respective kings, who often allied with or fought against Carthage and Rome, depending on the political situation. Following Massinissa's death, his successors faced challenges in maintaining the kingdom's stability. Jugurtha, one of Massinissa's grandsons, is particularly notable for his conflict with Rome, known as the Jugurthine War in the late 2nd century BC. Jugurtha's efforts to resist Roman influence and maintain Numidian independence ultimately failed, leading to his capture and the gradual incorporation of Numidia into the Roman sphere of influence. The Jugurthine War illustrated the complexities of Numidian politics, as internal rivalries and external pressures from Rome made it difficult for the kingdom to remain autonomous. The Numidians were renowned for their cavalry, which was considered among the finest in the ancient Roman sphere of influence. Numidian horsemen were highly skilled and played a crucial role in several major conflicts, including the Second Punic War. The Numidian cavalry were light cavalry that relied on speed, agility, and expertise in hit-and-run tactics. They wore little to no armor, and were armed primarily with javelins, making them ideal for skirmishing and harassing enemy formations. Their ability to quickly strike and retreat made them a formidable force on the battlefield, particularly against less mobile opponents. The Numidian cavalry was famously employed by both Hannibal and the Romans. In addition to their cavalry, the Numidians were skilled in guerrilla warfare. During the Jugurthine War, Jugurtha used his knowledge of the local terrain and the mobility of his forces to wage a prolonged campaign against the Roman legions. His tactics included ambushes, hit-and-run attacks, and the disruption of Roman supply lines, which frustrated the Roman commanders and prolonged the conflict for several years. Despite Jugurtha's eventual defeat, his methods of warfare left a lasting impression on the Romans and demonstrated the effectiveness of Numidian military strategy. The legacy of the Numidians is often overshadowed by the larger empires that surrounded them, but their contributions to the history of North Africa and the Mediterranean are significant. Massinissa's unification of the Numidian tribes and his agricultural reforms helped transform Numidia into a prosperous kingdom that later became an important part of the Roman Empire. The Numidian cavalry, with its unique style of warfare, left a lasting impact on military tactics and was highly valued by both Carthaginian and Roman commanders. The Yuezhi were an ancient Indo-European nomadic group whose movements and interactions significantly shaped the history of Central Asia and beyond. Emerging from the steppes of northwest China, they played a pivotal role in cultural exchanges along the Silk Road and established the influential Kushan Empire. Originally dwelling in the grasslands of the eastern Tarim Basin and Gansu Corridor, the Yuezhi were first mentioned in Chinese historical texts, like the records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian. Their society was characterized by nomadic pastoralism, relying heavily on horse breeding and herding. In the 2nd century BC, pressure from the Xiongnu, another powerful nomadic confederation, forced the Yuezhi to migrate westward. The Yuezhi's social structure was clan-based, with leadership often determined by noble lineages. Their society valued warrior prowess and horsemanship, essential traits for survival and dominance on the steppes. After their westward migration, the Yuezhi split into two groups, the Greater Yuezhi and the Lesser Yuezhi. The Greater Yuezhi eventually settled in Bactria, a region that had been part of the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, and laid the foundations for the Kushan Empire. The Kushan Empire, which lasted from the 1st to the 3rd centuries AD, became a melting pot of cultures, integrating Greek, Persian, Indian, and Yuezhi nomadic elements. The Kushans adopted the Greek alphabet for their inscriptions and coinage, but also embraced local languages and scripts, showcasing their adaptability and administrative acumen. As nomads, the Yuezhi excelled in cavalry warfare. They employed swift horse archers who could execute rapid attacks and retreats, a tactic known as the Parthian shot. Their military strategies relied on mobility, surprise, and the extensive use of composite bows. When they established the Kushan Empire, they expanded their military to include infantry and war elephants, especially in campaigns extending into the Indian subcontinent. The Kushan military was not just formidable but also diverse, incorporating soldiers from various ethnic backgrounds within their empire. The Yuezhi economy transitioned significantly over time. Initially as nomads, they depended on livestock and traded animal products and horses with neighboring settled societies. Their migration brought them to the crossroads of the Silk Road, where they became key players in transcontinental trade. Under the Kushan Empire, the economy flourished due to control over major trade routes. The Kushans facilitated the exchange of goods such as silk from China, spices from India, and glassware from Rome. They issued gold coins featuring a blend of Hellenistic and Indian deities, reflecting both the empire's economic prosperity and cultural syncretism. The Yuezhi's most enduring legacy lies in their cultural contributions. The Kushan Empire was instrumental in the spread of Buddhism. Kushan rulers like Kanishka the Great patronized Buddhist institutions and sponsored the construction of stupas and monasteries. This support helped Buddhism spread into Central Asia and China, profoundly influencing the religious landscape of the region. Artistically, the Kushan period saw the development of the Gandhara art style, which combined Greek artistic techniques with Buddhist themes. This fusion resulted in realistic sculptures of the Buddha with Greco-Roman features, a testament to the cultural exchanges facilitated by the Yuezhi. Don't forget to check out my main channel, Lazy Chill Zone, where I discuss unsolved mysteries, urban legends, true crime, and the occult. The link is in the comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it.